Thank you.
Continue.
Morning everybody and welcome to today's staff brief.
I haven't got live on. Morning everyone. Welcome to staff brief. A little bit of a hiccup there. Bear with me. Still learning this new technology. So I'm Paul Robinson. I'm the Chief Executive here at Sherwood, and today I've got with me, I've got Paresh from our prescribing team, who's going to talk about electronic prescribing implementation, and specifically the training and support that's available through that implementation. And I've also joined by Julie Hogg, our Chief Nurse, and Dave Selwyn, our Medical Director, and we're going to talk about the urgent care demands that we're currently experiencing and challenges that we're facing, and how we are addressing those and thinking about actions we can take to improve patient flow and patient safety. Just before I hand over to Julie and Dave, I need to remind everyone about the governor staff elections. So there's the opportunity to vote closes on Monday at 5 p.m. So please look in your inboxes for the ability to do that. You'll have received, I think, a couple of reminders that election's taking place and that the closing date's Friday, so on Monday. So please take advantage of that and get your vote in by 5 o'clock on Monday afternoon. Okay, so Julie, are you able to give the organisation sort of an overview of the challenges that we've been experiencing, not just this week? I think we've been talking about in the incredibly high demand in ED and our medical pathways for a number of weeks now, but it feels like each week is getting even more challenged and pressured, and staff are getting more tired and fatigued as a result. So if you could sort of give an overview and also some of the actions that we're considering taking to improve that. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Paul. Good morning, everyone. It's lovely to see so many of you virtually. So as Paul's mentioned, I think we have seen sustained pressure across the emergency pathway this is going into our third week of being almost stuck on what we call Opal 4, so the highest escalation level of operational pressure. And Simon Barton, if he were here today, he'd say that it's the worst he's seen in his 4.5 years here. We are managing to keep everybody safe, and that is because of a huge amount of effort across all of the teams, whether you work in the emergency department at the front of the pathway or in the discharge team or the discharge lounge at the back end of the pathway. There's no doubt that everybody is going above and beyond just to keep patients safe and flowing through the organisation. But as I say, that pressure has been sustained, and we are coming in every day to almost a ward full of patients, and sometimes more than that. And that is creating a huge amount of pressure, and people are beginning to feel tired with that, and we can see that. And you know, this comes after a 2-year period of trying to get through COVID as well, so we don't underestimate the amount of time, effort and energy that this is taking from everybody. We have already taken some extraordinary measures, so we have got every bed open that we can possibly open. So we've got Lyndhurst over at Mansfield Community, we've extended sconce over at Newark, we have relocated the discharge lounge off the short stay unit to create additional inpatient capacity there, and all of those changes put additional pressure on every team involved, you know, from the ward areas to outpatients who are displaced because we're having to use some of their space for the discharge lounge. So a huge amount of thanks to all of those teams. What is clear is that this isn't easing, and we are going into Easter in just over in around 10 days, and so we do need to do more. So there was a meeting held last night with many of the execs there, the clinical chairs, heads of nursing and divisional general managers, and together we have come up with a set of actions that we think will help us to make a difference over Easter and to keep everybody safe. So if I kick off with some of the ones that are quite nursing focused, and then Dave, if you pick up anything I've missed, does that sound reasonable? He's nodding. Yeah. So what we have seen is that it's getting increasingly difficult to get patients who are medically fit back to their care homes or into interim care. And this is because of the rising rates of COVID in the community. The care homes are all privately owned, so we don't really have any jurisdiction over amending their infection control rules. So we are looking at how we can, on one hand, support families to take patients home with some outreach support from the hospital. And then in the background, we're working up what we would call a transitional facility so that patients aren't in a hospital environment or in a more homely environment whilst they wait their package of care or to return to their care home or their interim care placement. We're also going to put in executive oversight of that medically fit list, because actually we think it requires that level of oversight so that there is pressure across the system as well as just in Sherwood. So there are a couple of bits that I'm leading on, and they relate to areas that are, you know, traditionally beyond the control of Sherwood, but there are things we can do inside Sherwood, and Dave will talk to you a bit more about what they are. Over to you, Dave.
Oh, thanks, Julie. And sorry for my croaky voice. So I guess the only things I'd sort of bring into that sort of initial bit is that this is the sort of absolutely ultimate wicked problem, and all of you on this this brief will know that flow through hospitals has been exercising everyone, not just at Sherwood, for years and years, and it continues to be a problem. And to some degree, I think what we're trying to describe is that this is a whole hospital problem, and sometimes people forget that and think, oh, it's just ED or it's just one particular ward or one particular service, but actually it's a whole hospital problem, and so everyone has responsibility and everyone has a part to play in it. And it's a bit like COVID, we all have to sort of have some joint ownership of this, and it's relatively small actions that actually can make a difference. And the focus that we were discussing last night was really to just concentrate on what we can do at Sherwood, what is within our grasp of and our ability to be able to influence and to change. And there's a tendency to say it's someone else's problem, it's all external and all of those sort of aspects. And without doubt, there are some issues there. And Paul, Julie and I are involved in those discussions across the system about what we can help and progress. But actually the key bit is, what can we do within Sherwood? How can we actually try and help some of these wicked problems? And Julie's talked about the extra activity. So we've had this week, and certainly for the first time since I've been at Sherwood, we've had patients who've been waiting in the emergency department for 24 hours for a bed. And I think we all recognise that is not the care that we aspire to provide. And we all recognise that people, whether you want to call it people are tired or frustrated or whatever, I think people want to come to work to do the job that they want to do, and they want to do their best that we can do. And so we need to try and help this. So we're looking really for a whole hospital, a whole system approach. It's everyone's business, and some of these things that we've sort of suggested, as Julie described, some of these things will institute and will fly and will make a huge difference, and some of them we may find make no difference, or we aren't able to progress, but certainly we'll be welcome other people's views on this call if we've missed anything. So obviously we've got all of the super surge activity open that we had around the Christmas time, excluding the cath lab beds and excluding the orthopedic ward having been reverted or swapped to medical patients. We are really conscious that in this tricky conundrum, we have our huge backlogs of patients, and so one of the key things we'll do will be to review our elective workload. There isn't a huge amount of impact we can make with that, because the majority of our patients come in and have either very limited or no length of stay. They're in as day cases, but we will look at that and we'll review that to see if there is a possibility to release beds by taking out any elective activity that we can cope with. We'll look at really consistency of how we do board rounds. And that's a key component, and we know we've made progress with this before. We know that people sort of do things slightly differently, but there are aspects that we can do and the timing of when we start and how we do the board rounds and trying to progress for flow, we can help, and we'll target that. We'll look at some of the medical cover as well that we're providing. We know that Sundays are always bad. Is it possible for us to increase our medical cover on the weekends, on the Sundays, recognizing that that's going to be as popular as you can imagine going into the Easter break? But this is something that we need to do as exceptional actions. There's something around actually how we can support the discharge teams. There's something about actually perhaps something new and different around. Many of you have heard of something called virtual wards. It's the ability for us to actually move our patients into a virtual facility where we can continue to provide some oversight and some limited care with or without conjunction with our community partners. That actually means they don't have to be in the hospital, and trying to do that and progress that. We've had some success with that with COVID, but actually what about some of the other groups that we could do with this? People waiting for perhaps diagnostic tests. And of course the other aspects are